everybody. Thanks so much for joining us right here for The Right View. I'm Lara Trump, and I'm so excited because I'm joined tonight by the owner of a 912 United and host of the Dear America podcast, Graham Allen, as well as our friend, attorney, and political commentator, and newlywed, Madison Gesiotto Gilbert. Madison, congratulations.
Thank you, Laura.
It's so funny now for me to say your name with three names in it. I'm so used to Madison Gesiotto. Anyway, congrats to you and your husband. You had a beautiful wedding in your home state of Ohio, and we were so excited for you guys. And we're glad that even amidst all the chaos of 2020 and 2021, you guys were able to have a beautiful wedding. So congratulations to you both. And Graham, of course,
Thank
to you,
you.
welcome back to the show. We're going to jump right in, guys, and talk about what else but Joe Biden, because on top of all of his terrible policy decisions, he has had a number of gaffes in less than 2 months in office. And we're not just talking about some things that you can kind of brush aside and people aren't going to notice. These have been really major. Like the most recent one was forgetting the name of his defense secretary and his job title. But maybe that's one of the reasons, guys, that he hasn't given a press conference. Why in over 100 years, we've never seen a president go this long without giving a formal press conference. And, it does continue to beg the question. And I think Americans are starting to sit up and take notice. Is Joe Biden really up for the job? Graham, I'll give you the first hit at this. What do you think?
For me, I like to make fun just as much as everybody. I like to politically jab just as much as everybody else. It's getting to a point where it's sad to me at this point now. Watching that video just the other day of him visiting the small business and him looking around, it legitimately appeared like he had no idea where he actually was. Kamala Harris just took another solo meeting with another world leader. I 100% don't believe that Joe Biden is calling the shots. I think that Joe Biden is being used. And even though I disagree with Joe Biden on virtually everything politically, I think that elder abuse, what do you call it at this point? This most popular president in history can't even get through a speech. And people like to bring up, oh, well, he's struggled with a stutter his entire life. Nobody ever brought that up before until now. If you look at the cognitive decline of Joe Biden, just look back in 2016, right at the end when the Obama-Biden administration was ending. Just look at the decline over the past 8 years in that regard, or the past 4 years in that regard, excuse me. It is shocking how different of a person Joe Biden is today as he was even 4 years ago. As you said, he can't get through simple things. The White House is cutting the feed when he says off script that he's ready to take some questions. It's like, kill the feed, kill it, because they know. I am super ready to see when he is going to give this alleged address the nation on the 1 year mark of 15 days to slow the spread, as Jen Psaki said at the White House press briefing. It will be interesting to see how long he goes, and B, if he just sticks to a script or what's going to happen. I'll be interested to see.
Oh, well, we'll all be paying close attention to that. I'm glad, by the way, you brought up the stutter because, it was around a year ago or so that I was harassed nonstop because I was talking about the fact that it was a little over a year ago that Joe Biden did not seem like the same Joe Biden we used to see in his vice presidential days. And I immediately got attacked by all these crazies on the left saying she's making fun of his stutter. One of them being Sully Sullenberger, the Miracle on the Hudson pilot, was a fan of his before this. I got attacked by these people. By the way, Graham, you're right. Nobody knew that Joe Biden had a stutter before the media started trying to cover up for him and saying, oh, well, you can't question anything with Joe Biden because he had a stutter when he was younger. It is absolutely ridiculous. I, of course, had no idea, nor did anyone else. But Madison, this is a really scary situation we found ourselves in because 50% of likely voters, this is a Rasmussen poll, which is one of the polling companies that most people find to be fairly accurate. 50% of likely voters, according to Rasmussen, say that they are not confident that Joe Biden is up to the job. And I think that I'm going to fall in the 50% category that says I don't think I'm very confident that he's up to it.
Well, the reality, unfortunately, is that many people for a long time leading up to this 2020 election had major concerns about Joe Biden and whether he was up for the job. And unfortunately, those concerns that myself, you, and many others had are coming to reality. And we're seeing them right now, day after day, when we see the gaffes. They're not just gaffes like they want to claim Joe Biden has been known for. He had gaffes years ago. It's funny. And first of all, a lot of times it's not funny because this is the person not only leading our country, but the leader of the free world. So we should be more concerned about it than the media would like for people to believe. But of course, this also affects the American people. In this low-profile media strategy that the Biden administration is implementing is, of course, not going to work. But also, you start to see even a couple people on the left, while many protect him, but I'm starting to see some people realizing, uh-oh, we helped prop this guy up. We covered for Joe Biden throughout his campaign. And now that he's president, they're not even letting us give questions to the president. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see how that plays out. Of course, as you mentioned, it's been over 100 years since we've had a president not make a press conference or an official press conference throughout the first 33 days of his presidency. With Joe Biden specifically, we're at 50 days with no press conference. And there's no little gaggles. There's nothing going on to show that open relationship with the press that we saw with President Trump. And I think what's really interesting is when we look back, you and I remember all the way back in 2016, they wanted to compare President Trump to these horrible dictators. And, they anticipated what his presidency would be like. And while there was a contentious relationship with the media, the relationship was there. So it was very open and it was very free. It was a great thing to see. However, what we're seeing now is actually much more similar to what you see in dictatorships, what you see in some of these horrible regimes over the past 100 years in history, that very similar shutdown relationship, low profile relationship with the media. So there are a lot of concerns. And of course, when we see a lot of the decisions made by the Biden administration, arguably maybe not by Joe Biden himself, considering we haven't heard anything from him on many of these, but those are negatively impacting people from my home state here in Ohio, across the Midwest, and many other areas. Of course, with that shutdown of the Keystone XL pipeline, not only the jobs directly related to the pipeline, but some of that ripple down effect in these communities that were propped up by the pipeline. It really needed that business, especially following the shutdowns and mandates from COVID-19 in many states, even here with a Republican governor who didn't seem to listen to the people in his own state. So it's very concerning to see Joe Biden as president, quite honestly, and what we feared is unfortunately coming to life. And I'm sad to see that.
Yeah, there's so much, I think, that we tried to warn people about with Joe Biden, that it's actually happening, and it's happening in so many different ways, and it's happening so quickly. And one of those things, guys, is our southern border. I'm sure people have heard a lot about it. Apparently, by the way, wanting to secure our borders during a pandemic makes you a Republican. And if that's the case, then, well, gosh, I'm happy to have that label. But the Arizona border chief has noted that illegal immigration is on track to top the past 3 years combined. So we're talking 2018, 2019, and 2020 combined. So if the people coming across the southern border stays at the level it has been, since the beginning of this year, and gosh, we're in the very beginning of March, guys, we're looking at an absolute crisis on our hands. And by the way, nobody can give us an explanation in terms of what the plan is. Nobody really has a plan. But I want to just kind of ask this question. Is anybody surprised that we have these caravans of migrants coming to our southern border? Is anyone surprised that we have more children held in these centers than at any point under the Trump administration? We have 3,200 plus migrant children, that's at least that we know of, that are in these facilities controlled by Border Patrol. And Donald Trump got a lot of flack for that back when he was president. They said, of course, kids in cages, don't forget that stuff. But what we're seeing now is a direct result, Graham, I think, of what Joe Biden said during the campaign, what Joe Biden has been very happy to put out there across the world that we would have an open border, that you can get amnesty if you come into our country unchecked, that really we're just going to give free health care to illegal immigrants. All of these very enticing things that he talked about during the campaign, he has now allowed our borders, I guess, to just be wide open. So are we surprised at all that this has happened, and how bad, by the way, it has gotten?
No, we're not surprised. Within a record amount of time, we have open borders, but still closed schools, closed businesses. You have Gavin Newsom, of all people, whose state has been horrific during the COVID-19 pandemic. And they've been the most, if not the absolute most locked down state in general, trying to get mad at Texas for opening up, but saying nothing about Joe Biden allowing thousands upon thousands of people that we know are infected with COVID-19 and just coming into the border at all. Let me say this. This is the plan in 1, 2, 3 of the Democratic Party. This was the plan the entire time. Joe Biden not being available to the people, all of this is the plan. Donald Trump, President Trump, did something that he doesn't get enough credit for. And I know this is a little off topic, and I apologize about this, but it needs to be said. The thing that President Trump will go down in history for, in my opinion, when the history books are written, is that he opened the eyes to the American people of what is actually going on behind closed doors. That's why you're seeing even the media, even the liberal media, is saying, wait a minute. We can't talk about these things. You're not going to give us answers about these things. Where is the president? Why is the president not talking to us? Nobody did that during the Biden-Obama administrations. Mm-hmm. Nobody did that during the Bush administrations, the Clinton administrations. Nobody cared. President Trump opened the eyes to millions upon millions of Americans. That's why Dan Crenshaw said it best this morning on Fox News. Texas should be sending a bill straight to President Biden's office because now Texas is having to deploy the National Guard. Texas is having to pay more for DPS to manage and patrol these borders because of open policies that simply do not work. We have millions of Americans that are out of work, that are in debt, that can't pay their bills. And at some point, a stimulus package and a stimulus check is coming. Maybe, but the best stimulus package is an open economy. But yet here we are. This is exactly the way it was supposed to go from the very beginning. And what they were hopeful for was that Americans would go back to just don't worry about it. Look over here. Don't worry about what's happening over here. And we're sick of it. There is no going back. And that will be President Trump's most lasting legacy, in my opinion, is that he opened the eyes to so many people of the corruption across the board.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I couldn't agree with you more on that. But also, I think one of the things that the Democrats were so hopeful would happen is that they could continue to play this emotion card, because that's what it's all about with them. You know, the reality is that we all want to do the right thing. We all want to help people in need. We all want to, if there are people that really are seeking asylum because they cannot stay in their country because they are in danger, we want to help those people. We don't want children, locked up away from their families in facilities on the other side of the border here in America. But the Democrats have always argued, Madison, that, you're a bad person if you don't want to just let everybody into the country. If you for some reason don't want illegal immigrants coming in here, if you for some reason don't want to let all these kids in here, you're a bad person. Let me tell you something. As a mother of 2 children, it is horrific to see that there are these children that are separated from their parents. But guess what? The most humane and the most conscionable thing to do would be for those kids to never get to our southern border by themselves. Their parents sometimes send them with coyotes, with people that are not, their own family, people that don't even know them. These coyotes sometimes use these kids to get in the country, to traffic drugs in here, etc. So whenever you have a president saying, come on into America, it's all for the taking, it's all open, we're going to take care of you here, of course these parents are going to send their kids on this perilous journey. Of course they're going to attempt to get them into America. a quarter of women that come up through our southern border are sexually assaulted. It is a dangerous trip. It is something that should never happen. And the best thing we could do as Americans is make that incredibly clear. Do not come to our southern border and try and get in here illegally, because it won't happen. And you know who did that? Donald J. Trump did that. That's why we saw record low numbers of people trying to cross our southern border when he was president. So I'm so sick of this emotional card that the Democrats have tried to play. But I think Graham is right, Madison. I think people are starting to take notice that something is wrong here, that this maybe is not the best plan for America. What do you think?
It's really sad to see, Laura, what's happening, I think, on our southern border. And we watch these videos a lot of times, like you mentioned, having children in them. And these children, you don't know who they're coming with. When they tested DNA of many of the children in previous occasions, they realized that, no, these weren't their parents. And so really, it is safer to do what our policy is on the southern border when trying to make sure these children are not being human trafficked. These children are not in any danger. But of course, it's very hypocritical when you hear the way the Democrats talk about this. And they try to play with people's emotions, as you say. But of course, they know the truth. And the truth is that without protection of the border, not only are these people not protected who are innocent and who are trying to come here, of course, to have a better life, but the citizens of the United States are not protected. And what was so, I think, refreshing about President Trump is that he put America first. And we say that, and it's becoming an everyday phrase for many Americans, but it's a very real reality, especially for people in the state of Ohio, which is, of course, like we mentioned, my home state. Many people here were affected directly in their families, or someone they know was affected by the drug crisis. And many of those drugs came up through the southern border. So it's not always even about who's coming across the border, but also what's coming across the border. Many deaths for many years. It was a complete crisis, and we saw the Obama-Biden administration do nothing about that. And so when President Trump came in and tried to protect that border, it was so critically important. Obviously, that job is not done. And now we're seeing Biden coming into office immediately with really, I don't think, any gray area, showing that this is an open border. Come on to the border. And you see what they're doing in the media to play again with people's emotions, taking these pictures where people have these fresh Biden shirts on, like let us in, Biden. I'd love to know where they get these brand new T-shirts without a mark on them after these hundreds of miles of journey. But point being, sometimes they're quite successful in playing with people's emotions and making them see something that's different than what's actually happening. And I know many people in Texas who live in border areas who are very concerned. They've seen an influx of crime in some instances. Of course, COVID-19, when they're releasing over 100 people in one small area that tested positive for COVID-19. So many concerns. And of course, the statistics speak for themselves as you see that great influx of migrants right now that are just being released into the United States instead of waiting to take the proper steps. My family immigrated here. I know many other families who have immigrated to the United States over the past 1, 2, 3 generations, and they did it the right way. And so it's very hard for people who have done it the right way, who really want to have a better life in the United States of America, whether they be from Mexico or Italy or wherever they're from. They're waiting, and they're waiting for their court dates, and they're doing it right, and they're following those procedures that many times were put in place in recent years by the Trump administration. And it's unfortunate that these people are now skipping the line to get in front of them. Most of these people, of course, don't end up showing up to those court hearings. And so it becomes a crisis, especially for American workers, many of which are still out of work trying to find jobs. And those jobs are now being taken by people from outside that are not legal immigrants here in the United States. And I think it's very important to note that many ICE officials and former ICE officials recognize and have been speaking out, saying that this is by design. Tom Homan, of course, being former ICE director, going on Fox News and other outlets saying, this is by design. This is not an accident or incompetence by the Biden administration. They are purposely doing this, and it's something we need to keep an eye on. And of course, something we need to keep in mind as we get ready to vote for Congress in 2022, and then for presidency and Congress again in 2024.
Yeah, where did they get those nice, clean Biden shirts? That is a great question.
Handing them out. They're handing them out. They're throwing them out.
Well, they probably are. And look, I hate to continue to be the mom here, and I never thought that this would be a role that I would continue to play like this. But look, I feel like in some ways that people can say whatever they want about President Trump. Maybe you didn't like his tweets. We know that a lot of people didn't, and don't worry about that. He is off Twitter now, so don't fret. Maybe you thought that he delivered a message too harshly, but you know, what I do with my kids is it's called tough love. And I want my kids to get it the first time around. I don't want them to continue to make the same mistakes over and over again because it can be dangerous or problematic in many ways. We got tough love with Donald Trump. When he said, don't cross our southern border, he meant it. Whenever he told Iran, don't even try to mess with us, he meant it. And I think the problem that I'm seeing right now is it's like, you know, these parents that kind of coddle their kids and the kids don't know where the line is and what's right and wrong. That's what we're getting with the Biden administration. It's, you know, people are like, well, I guess I'll just do whatever I want because there's really no consequence. And I think one of those countries is China. We talked all throughout the campaign about how cozy Joe Biden and the entire Biden family were with China. We said that it would be a problem. And now it has become a problem on many different fronts. I think one of those fronts is that the Biden administration is still kind of dancing around a question on whether or not they believe China is still committing genocide against these Muslims. They're called Uyghurs in China. It is very clear that there are these internment camps, these really disgusting ways that these individuals are treated in China, yet they're not willing, Graham, to say anything about that. They don't want to confirm anything. A Chinese court recently ruled homosexuality was a mental disorder. This is in 2021. This just happened. And I think if you want to take a look at a really good stance on things, Marsha Blackburn, I just read an article that she was quoted in on Breitbart. Her entire dissertation on exactly what is going on in China with the Biden administration. If you haven't seen it, you should look it up. But let me ask you, what do you think is going on with Joe Biden and China? Why won't they say whether or not there's genocide that's happening? Why aren't they condemning the fact? And by the way, why is the NBA not saying anything about the fact that this Chinese court just ruled homosexuality a mental disorder and such things like that?
Well, I think it's one, Americans are spoiled. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but Americans are entitled and this and that. The very people that claim that there are so many things wrong with America, that America is this horrible, bigoted, racist place, then hears reports of everything that's going on. And Twitter doesn't have a problem with these tweets, by the way, either. Like they will literally tweet the Chinese Communist Party will tweet propaganda on Twitter about these very things, of how well these camps are going, and nobody says anything. But Donald Trump said something that hurt your feelings, even though it was the truth, but it hurt your feelings, so therefore he needs to go away. Americans live in this entitlement era, which is very sad. I love what you said about your kids and tough love and hey, you messed up. Guess what? There's consequences to your actions. We don't live that way anymore. We're participation trophies. We are, you want to be a woman, but you're actually a dude? Of course you should be able to do that and completely destroy women's sports in general in the most anti-woman equality act I've ever seen. But that's another topic for another time. China intimidates Joe Biden. The end. That's all there is to it. That's all you need to know. Joe Biden is afraid of China. China, in public or whatnot, celebrated when Joe Biden won and Donald Trump was leaving office because they were afraid of Donald Trump. You see the difference there? We were a asserted world power. We were America. We were America first. The greatest country in the world. Do not mess with us. The only world power that has the ability to threaten us is China. And immediately, within a less than 50-day time span, President Joe Biden has now made it to where America is falling down the ladder like this. We're fixing to, if they haven't done it already, hadn't watched the news today, sign another $1.9 trillion in debt. China was the only economy, I believe, that was overall profitable during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns. Right. I wonder why that was. This isn't a conspiracy theory when it's simply the truth. Those are the data. That's the facts. Joe Biden is in the pocket. Well, let me rephrase how I want to say this. Joe Biden is intimidated by China. Joe Biden is afraid of China. And cognitively and physically, Joe Biden doesn't have what it takes to stand up against China. Can you imagine, God forbid, if a war did happen and President Joe Biden is in charge of the men and women that would have to go fight a battle to protect America? Do you feel safe? Or does that terrify you to your core? And if anyone watching this really thinks about it for just 5 seconds, you are terrified at that. Not over war. America's used to war, right? We've been in war before, although Donald Trump was the first president we've had in a very long time not to get us into a new war, but nobody talks about that either. But I'm telling you right now, I was in the Army for 12 years. I was underneath Bush and I was underneath Obama. I was never underneath President Trump. I had gotten out by that point. Every single military service member I know loved Donald Trump because they knew that Donald Trump had their back and he knew that he was going to lead them in the right direction if anything ever did pop off. Joe Biden is a disaster, and we are seeing it faster than ever before. I don't think he makes it the 4 full years. I just don't. I think that his cognitive decline will get worse, and I think you'll have a President Harris before it's all said and done.
Oh my gosh. Well, talk about some really scary stuff. Madison, I want to give you a chance to talk about China. It's not a joke. You know, this is not like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It is a huge deal. Why do you think, Graham, you bring up a great point about China's tweets not being censored? CCP, Chinese Communist Party. They are communists. They are, the way that China operates is absolutely terrifying. And every American should thank their lucky stars that they are American, that they don't live in China, because you have no rights over there. They can basically do whatever they want. But there's a reason that their tweets aren't censored. It's because they are in, bed with big tech. They all profit off of one another. The microchips and all of the processors and everything that big tech needs to function comes out of China. And you talk about so many ways that China is winning right now under a Biden presidency. It's not a joke. We have to take this stuff seriously. I really hope that Americans wake up and demand that the current president of the United States stands up strongly against China.
It's about time, and it's been frustrating to see in this short amount of time the drastic change in the way that the United States is handling China on the federal level. Obviously, we saw a great change from the Obama-Biden administration to the Trump administration in terms of accountability for China. And it's something that I think was almost too late by the time we even came, in with the Trump administration, because for almost 20 years, this has been going on. And what's very interesting, and I think something many people don't know, is part of why China became the China that we know today is American politicians like Joe Biden, who pushed for China back in 2000. Joe Biden himself said that China would never be an economic threat to the United States. It would be nothing more than the Netherlands economically. He pushed for them to be admitted to the World Trade Organization. And as China grew and grew, we saw, especially, of course, with trade, those unfair trade practices and how that affected not only us here in the United States, but all across the world, because we saw the types of behaviors China was engaged in. Of course, manipulating currency being one of them, stealing technology. And then they also went on to do things like dump steel so that they could affect the world markets. And so it's really crazy, I think, when you think about all these things and what the impact ultimately was on American workers, on American factories, on jobs, and what we saw happen here in the United States and many other countries, and nobody stood up to China. And we saw Republicans do the same thing. It was Republicans and Democrats, of course, continuing to sit down and do nothing. So we come in, we see this difference in 2017, and we're holding them accountable. Things are changing, and then now we see no accountability once again. It's very interesting, though, and something I think to watch is how some of the people working for Biden actually handle this, because I think there's been a bit of disconnect, actually, between the Secretary of State and the State Department under Biden and the Biden White House itself. Because I think there are Democrats who do agree with us on this topic and that want to see that accountability, especially after we saw the lies from the Chinese Communist Party last year when it came to COVID-19, and of course the lives lost as a result of that. We see that slaughter of the Uyghur Muslims, and of course, right as one of the last things they did before leaving office, the Secretary of State, Secretary Pompeo, under the Trump administration, gave that designation of genocide, which is not just a word people throw around. Of course, in the State Department, and many people who have worked in government know what it takes to ultimately get to that designation, and how strong that word really is, and meeting all of these criteria, and exactly what they're doing is horrible. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it here, but for people who don't know, it's definitely something you may want to look up online and read about how horrific the conditions are for this Muslim minority population in China, what they've done to many other people as well. And of course, there's concerns of China wanting that world domination. And so we have to make sure that we continue to put our interests first, hold China accountable as much as we can, and as Donald Trump tried to do during his presidency, because it's going to be critical for our children and our grandchildren's generations, because this problem is not going away on an international scale.
Yeah, not going away in any manner. So they better start taking it very seriously. All right, we're going to take one quick break. Don't go anywhere, because Madison, Graham, and I will be right back with you. Welcome back to The Right View. So I'm here with Madison and Graham. Speaking of Graham, Lindsey Graham was pretty clear that he thought that there was a trilogy of radical policies, that these 3 Democratic bills would really mean that America will not be the same nation you remember. And that's really scary stuff, guys. I've talked about these bills numerous times here on The Right View, but let's break them down for people, and I want to get the response from each of you on it. So the first one being this $1.9 trillion COVID stimulus bill. I put that in air quotes because how ridiculous. That was passed by the Senate early this past Saturday. Obviously, 90% of it has nothing to do with COVID-19 at all. It's a Democratic wish list, and the arts and the museums and everything else is just cleaning up. Only 44% of Americans approve of this bill, which is, that's significant. That's not a small section of America. The White House has touted that this stimulus bill is the most progressive in history. Now, I don't know that you want that accolade, but let me give you guys a chance to respond to this, because it's ridiculous. It's putting us in debt. It's making people reliant on the government more so than ever before. Madison, give me your thoughts on this bill.
It's so disappointing, number one, and number two, we can't afford it. So you see what's going on in government. You see this overwhelming spending that's been happening for many years. We're not seeing a balancing of our budget, and this is going to come back to bite us in the future. So I'm concerned about that on a larger level. But with the bill specifically, you mentioned most of it not going to COVID-19 relief. And I think that's where you're seeing that reflection in that number of how many people support it. Because I talked to many people about this over the past couple of weeks, some of them being some of my friends who are Democrats, who do not view politics the same way that we do. But at the same time, they look at this and they're pretty frustrated. There was actually a really funny clip I posted that was from CNN, and I put that on my social media pages the other day, where this younger man was saying, hey, we're dropping these missiles, and that's real expensive for someone who owes me $2,000, talking about Joe Biden. And so it's interesting to see people's perspective on this, because people want Americans to be put first, and that's what they've really wanted throughout this entire pandemic. And while President Trump gave, I think, a great effort and did the best job he could in his position, I don't think Congress really did the same thing. And this is just another reflection of that. And while the Democrats have been worse, we've seen it with some Republicans as well that won't stand up for their districts, that won't stand up for what's right. Of course, money just continuing to be poured out on pet projects for the Congress people. In this bill specifically, there was over $1 million given to a bridge that they want to build in between New York and Canada. It has absolutely nothing to do with COVID, and that was Schumer's pet project. So it's very interesting when you really peel through all the pages, which most people will never get the chance to read, and see what they're doing. But again, as I said, you mentioned, and we talk about Congress and what they've been doing, and we look back to when President Trump was president and some of the things he was pushing for, of course, being that direct stimulus. He said, just make it a direct stimulus. Don't include anything else. Give $2,000 to the Americans who need it. And we didn't see that happen. And so I'm also a little frustrated with the timing of this bill. I think it's quite too late. I think this was needed a long time ago. And now we're, heading into April almost of 2021, a year after, 15 days to slow the spread. And most Americans have not gotten anything more than, that original stimulus and then the $600. So it's been difficult, I think, to see how people have been affected, especially in states where they continue to refuse to open up, businesses being closed down at astronomical rates in many of these states, some restaurants closing down at over 50%. Of these restaurants will never open their doors again in certain areas. And so I think it's devastating to some of these local economies. It's obviously hurt our economy throughout 2020 as well. So there's a lot that's going to happen. And I don't think the bill necessarily is as helpful to the economy as it could have been previously, or that we hoped that it would be.
Yeah, and I think, Graham, we're very lucky that Donald Trump actually left us in such a great spot economically. I mean, we can't afford this bill, by the way, Madison. You're exactly right. We cannot. It is ridiculous. Almost $2 trillion. $2 trillion. I mean, what? What are we doing here? And whenever 90+% of it does not go to the task at hand, which is getting people through this pandemic. Graham, do you think maybe we would have been better off, I don't know, opening back up and, hey, allowing people to go back to work, allowing businesses to open, allowing people to earn a living, allowing kids to go back to school, as we have seen in very great states like Florida and Texas and Mississippi, places that are now open around America. Maybe that would have been a better route.
Yeah, I was very anti-second stimulus bill, COVID relief bill, second one. I've been very open about that. I think that we should have opened the economy up a long time ago. I was pro the first one because nobody really knew what we were dealing with during that time frame. It was different. It was different the first time around. The data and the science does not back up the fact that the entire economy is not open. It just does not back that up. And the very people that claim that they listen to the science and they really listen to Lord Fauci, but at the end of the day, the Sith Lord, as I like to call him. But the point is, they don't listen to the data. They don't listen to the science. The best stimulus package is an open economy. The thing that kills me is like this: 44% of Americans agree with this, as you said. That's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Well, and also, you can't trust the polls because, for all we know, they polled 500 people at the end of the day. Like who knows how many they actually did? But let's just say 44% of America actually does. Well, that means that 44% of America didn't really learn how business and the economy works in school. 44% of America weren't trained and taught properly by their parents because they would understand that a $2,000 stimulus check 8 months later and you haven't had a job. I wonder how many people are re-questioning the fact and wondering, did I sell my vote for $2,000? Did I sell America out for $2,000? I think there's a lot of people, whether they'll ever admit it publicly or not. And that's why I think 2022, you're going to see a red wave. And 2024, you're going to see a red wave as well, because I think there are a lot of people who were put in a position they never should have been put into that did. I think they sold their vote for $2,000 at the promise of $2,000, which at the end of the day, if you're behind your rent 6 months, what is $2,000 really going to do for you in the first place? So the whole thing is baffling to me that everybody wraps their head around this $2,000 stimulus check. What is that actually going to do? You haven't been to work in 8 months. What is $2,000 actually going to do for you and your family in the long run? Nothing is the answer for that. Going back to work is what's going to provide for your family. Going back to work and opening your businesses is what's going to spark the economy. We are headed for inflation, period. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's like taking out loans to buy a car flat out. Well, yeah, it looks like you just bought a new Porsche or whatever it is, but that loan is going to come back to haunt you here in a couple months. Now, you might have a balloon payment at the end of it, but here pretty soon, somebody's going to have to pay for this. This bill will cost every American upwards of $5,700. but only some Americans are going to get $1,400. And then Lord only knows where all the other money is going to go. Our children's children are going to be paying for this. And honestly, they're not going to be able to pay for it because we're killing the economy. We're not infusing it the proper way. And a non-functioning economy is an economy that cannot last. And the scariest part is that people, they just don't see it because so many people don't understand how this actually works. And you can blame that on school. You can blame that on the home life, how these younger generations that are voting now for $2,000 were brought up. It is a crisis across the board, not only societal wise, but also just government wise. The government doesn't care. They don't care.
Well, hey, maybe we can just borrow the money from China to repay that. What do you think?
Might as well.
At this point, the second of this trilogy that is going to be a disaster for America that Senator Graham discussed is H.R. 1, House Resolution 1, this voting rights bill. It's so scary. Gosh, Graham, you just talked about the red wave that I sure hope we see in 22. I sure hope we see in 24. But if this bill gets passed, it's going to be incredibly challenging to make that happen. This would federalize our voting system in America. Right now, it is state by state, as it has always been in America. If this bill goes forward, it federalizes it. It makes it incredibly easy for fraud to be perpetrated. It gives so much room for just mucking up the process. If people were confused about this past election on November 3rd, 2020, get ready if the Democrats get their way, Madison, because H.R. 1, they call it For the People Act. I don't think so. It's For the Politicians Act is what it should be called, because that is the only group that's going to benefit from this. It's basically like open borders for voting. Let me get your thoughts on H.R. 1.
Well, it's very clear that this is a big federal power grab. And what they want to do, I think, is very concerning for elections moving forward. I've posted a lot about this, encouraging people to call their senators, telling them to vote against it, because if this becomes a reality, there's going to be automatic voter registration. Felons are going to be given that right to vote, of course, a very controversial topic. But then we'll see public money going to fund campaigns. I'm very much against this. I know many others are as well, but it's something that some people don't understand and don't even realize is in there. On top of that, one of the other things that we've seen be an issue since all the way back in 2000 is the purging of the voter rolls. People who do not live at an address anymore still being listed at that address. And we talked a lot about this in 2020 as a result of those ballots just being mailed out. And so even I was in Florida at the time, and my husband was registered to vote in Florida. And when we were engaged at the time, I went down and we got a bunch of ballots in the mail, in Florida, it was like the letters to get you to register to get the ballots. But point being, a bunch of them came in the mail that were for people who didn't even live there. And so in other states where they would have automatically mailed the ballots, those would have been ballots. And that did happen in a lot of places. So it's very concerning to have those ballots automatically mailed. That's something that people need to continue to keep an eye on because that can't become a reality. But anyways, this is going to make it very hard for people and for states to purge the voter rolls and to get those people who no longer live at addresses, to get dead people off, to get Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse, and your dog that might be registered to vote somewhere off those rolls. And so now it doesn't like ban it or make it impossible, but it still makes it very difficult. So there's a lot of issues with H.R. 1. I certainly do not support it, and I think it could really destroy elections for years to come.
Yeah, and Graham, we know that this has been something that the Democrats have wanted for a very long time. In fact, this is not the first time they've tried to pass this bill, and this has been House Resolution 1 before right now. This has been the first bill that Nancy Pelosi tried to push forward in the House before just now. It's been in years past as well, because I think the Democrats know that one of the reasons that Joe Biden is president today is because they changed the way that we vote in America under the guise of COVID in 2020. They said, well, gosh, it's not safe for you to go vote. You can stand in line to go to Home Depot or the grocery store, but if you stand in line to vote, then you could get COVID.
Or get on a plane.
Right. Oh, yeah, you're fine. Well, you have to stand 6 feet apart while you're getting on the plane. But when you're on the plane, you could be right next to the people beside you. It's all ridiculous. But it's really such a frightening prospect. I hope we see that red wave. I really, really do. But this shouldn't surprise us because, like I said, this is not the first round for the Democrats trying to push this forward. They are desperate to get this moving forward because I think they know if we have another legitimate election, which I do not believe November 3rd, 2020 was, our video will probably get taken down for me saying that. If we have another legitimate election, Republicans are going to mop the floor with the Democrats, as you said.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to keep this as simple as I can. I think that, well, politicians do this on purpose, but even those of us that are involved in the world, we do it just unintentionally. The average American doesn't understand everything that we're talking about. They just don't. They don't follow policy all day. They don't understand. So I'm just going to say this as clearly as I can. Any policy, any bill, any reform, anything that government tries to pass that removes roles or removes power away from the individual states and gives it to the government is bad. No matter what it is. I don't care what they say. I don't care how they try to church it up, et cetera, et cetera. That is not the way that America was designed. And that is not the way that our Constitution, it was meant to be interpreted in the first place. And I would dare say that it is anti-constitutional because the power is supposed to lie with the people in their individual states. That's the way it should go. So I am firmly and 100% against H.R. 1. I have faith that it's not going to make it. I think we're dangerously close to it making it. I still don't think that we're there yet. And so I do. I think we're going to have that opportunity in 2022. And I think we're going to have that opportunity in 2024. But just for the people listening, it's that simple. The Constitution really is that simple. It is complicated and complex, but it is also very simple in nature. Anything that tries to remove power away from the states, away from the people, is wrong. It's bad, it's wrong, and that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yep, amen to that. We're going to move on to the third part of the absolutely terrible Democrat trilogy of bills, which is the Equality Act. It should be called the Inequality Act, quite frankly, because it's ridiculous. And Graham, you brought this up earlier. This is a bill that does away with the distinction between being a man and a woman in the law. I mean, I can't even believe that they've gone this far, but they have. Biological boys will start playing in girls' sports. And if you're a religious organization out there and your faith dictates that certain things happen, this bill takes the ability for you to say no totally away. I mean, this is a full reshaping of America in the image of the Democrats. And by the way, the radical far left Democrats, they don't want people to have their own identities anymore. They don't want people to, I guess, be able to practice their religious beliefs anymore. This is just sort of, I mean, I don't know, Madison, as a woman, look, I have a daughter. I continue to talk about this. I had the opportunity to play sports growing up. It was such a huge part of my upbringing and really made me the person I am today. This is an awful, awful bill, and I cannot believe that there is anyone in Congress that would sign on to it, let alone the President of the United States supporting it.
I am so discouraged to see what's going on with this bill specifically. You're not the only mom that I've heard from. I have a friend in Pittsburgh who has a daughter who's a talented athlete who is super frustrated about this bill. I saw her posting about it quite a bit on social media, and many others, of course, all across the country. I was an athlete, a figure skater myself growing up. And interestingly enough, and obviously common sense to most of us, but doesn't seem to be something the Democrats want to acknowledge, there are biological differences between women and men. So while I might be working on doubles, jumps and figure skating, the men were working on the triples. And when I was working on the triples, they're working on the quads. So the men were always able to do a little bit more than we were able to do because they were biologically stronger. They were different than we are. It doesn't mean women cannot be amazing and do great things, but it's not fair to see what's happening when it comes to men in women's sports. So very concerning. Of course, some of the other things in regards to religion, of course, separation of church and state, something that the Democrats are forgetting anymore, are very upsetting. I'm a devout Catholic. There are many things that I hold very dear to my heart and have fought for when it comes to anti-abortion movements and things like that. So it's frustrating to see that this is all being thrown out the window, and of course under a supposed Catholic president. So I'm a little just upset to see that, and something that I think is going to continue to get worse. We saw this back in 2016, and we talked over the past 4 years about this slippery slope, and I think we're now seeing the slippery slope that was mentioned previously.
Yeah, but don't worry, because Joe Biden, we've seen photos of him going to church on Sunday. So don't worry about it, America. Nothing to see here. Graham, really, whenever the White House was questioned about this, circle back, Jen Psaki responded to the amendment to keep biological males out of women's sports, which, by the way, I want to give a big shout out to Kristi Noem and people like her who have been standing up against this and saying, not in my state, we're not going to let this fly. Jen Psaki says that Joe Biden believes transgender rights are human rights and wants to see kids have the opportunity to play sports and participate in a range of activities. Let me just say that I think for most people that I know, this has nothing to do with anybody being transgender. I want people to live their own lives. I want you to do what makes you happy. I have a real problem when you tell my daughter that she has to compete against a biological male. And what a ridiculous statement from Jen Psaki. Wants to see kids have the opportunity to play sports and participate in a range of activities. What about the girls, Joe? The girls are, thanks a lot. It's done for them. They're not getting the scholarships. They're not getting into college of their choice now. That they're not going to have the same opportunities that they had before such a ridiculous thing was put in motion. I don't know. To me, this is just so outrageous, and I actually can't believe that we're already here in America.
Yeah, well, to some people's surprise, I am not a woman. But I respect women, what they're able to do. I agree with both of you. There are biological differences between men and women, no matter what kind of hormone.
And it pains me to admit that. It pains me to admit it, but it's true.
I'm sure there's women that could mop the floor with me on certain things. I'm sure that there are, and I have no doubt about that. When I was in the Army, there were some girls that could run circles around me, but we're talking about the majority of situations here, right? And the majority of situations are there are biological differences between men and women. I don't care how many hormone suppressants you take. I don't care anything. Your bone structure, density, everything, it's different. It is not the same. We are, Jen Psaki, I want every person or every child to have the opportunity to play sports. Well, no, you really are only talking about one group. Create a transgenderly. I don't know what the answer is, but here's what I do know. You can't force other people to believe when your freedoms then infringe on other people's freedoms. It's no longer freedoms. It's dictatorship. That's what it is. You are dictating what other free Americans are allowed to do. Biological women should not be forced to compete against biological males who identify as something else. No. Your chromosomes and everything say something completely different. And that goes to the people that believe in the data and the science. The data and the science tell us that men and women are different. You can't do these type of things. There's a reason. Hey, I'm all for the Vanderbilt kicker, the female kicker.
Yeah, it's so great.
I'm all for that. But guess what she's not going to do? She's not going to be a running back actually trying to go through and break through the line on things, because things are different, right? That's the way it is. This is the most insane thing, the most anti-woman thing that I have seen in a long time. And it's just like Democrats get away with this stuff. We are pro-women while we destroy women. Bernie Sanders, we're going to give you free health care by taxing you more. I mean, they get away with things that other people wouldn't get away. And put this in front of a child. Put this in front of two kids. Ask two 8-year-olds, a boy and a girl. Hey, are you the same? Can you guys do the same stuff? Are you guys going to be able to? A child would look at you like you are the dumbest person in the history of the world. Obviously, we're not the same. Obviously, we're different. I have 2 boys and a daughter. They will tell you all the time, well, we're faster than her. And she'll say, well, I can dance better than them, and blah, blah, blah. There's differences. We've lost all rational thought because there is no the truth anymore. There is their truths and our truths and my truths, and there are no the truths in our society anymore. And we don't have people that are willing to stand up for social norms within our society that are not bad things.
No.
Social norms are not bad. They're not bad. One more time, they are not bad. But we've made it this taboo thing. And so I think it is horrible. I think it is a atrocity against women. I love women. I'm married to one. I think women, and I have a daughter myself, and I wonder what kind of world she's going to have when she's a teenager. And so somebody has to do something. People have to stand up and do something. And bravo the governors that said this is crazy, not my state. They need to do the same thing with HR 1 if that by some while passes. Nope, we're not. Nope, absolutely not. We need more governors with backbones, which most of them are Republican governors, if I'm pretty sure.
Imagine that.
On that, but we need people to stand up to the federal government, because the federal government does not have the view of the people in mind. The scariest thing to a free society is a government that thinks it's right. That's the scariest thing to a free society.
Wow. Absolutely true words. So let's all absolutely keep that in mind. Speaking of freedoms, it's apparently, if your name is Donald J. Trump, you are just censored nonstop, because President Trump censored again after his CPAC speech. He received over 5 million plus views on YouTube and over 31 million views overall for that speech. I think everybody wanted to tune in and really hear what he had to say. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, well, wait a minute, that's impossible, because we were told at The Right View on Tuesday that we were suspended for a week due to Google not liking the content of one of our former episodes. I mean, it was posted all the way back in like January. Guys, it feels like tech companies are now censoring political opponents in the same ways that the Russian or Chinese government itself has made famous. I mean, I thought it was bad enough when they took him off Twitter. I thought it was bad enough when they tried to take him down off of Facebook. They took down his YouTube page. But I mean, I'm sorry, but this is not a controversial show, The Right View. This censorship is really, really frightening. And it kind of takes us back to, Madison, what we were talking about with China. I mean, there's a reason that China is not censored in any way, shape, or form on these outlets, yet Donald Trump is, yet this show is. Governor Abbott was very clear that he wants this bill to prohibit social media censorship in Texas. He says that it would allow any Texan who has been canceled, censored, or deplatformed to file a lawsuit against Twitter, Facebook, or any of these other companies. We need more people like that, Madison. 2 Graham's point about, the governor standing up. What do you think about all this censorship?
Well, I love what's happening in Texas, and I'll definitely be following along closely with that, because I think it's something that we could see happen in other states across the country, and I think that would be a great movement, especially looking back just a few years ago to now, and seeing that very, very quick progression from what started as what we call shadow banning and the changing of algorithms, and people's videos that used to get 100,000 views all of a sudden are getting 5,000, 6,000, something obviously just not seeming quite right, but it wasn't blatant out there in the public like it is now. And so now we see their transition from that to what they started doing with President Trump and others, where they're just straight out saying, hey, this person can't be on here. Done, banned, shut it down. And it's wild that it's the president of the United States that they did this to, the leader of the free world. And I am very concerned that I'm not hearing more voices talking about this. You heard people talking about it when it was the first week, right? And it was like the hot topic and everyone's talking about it. But now we fast forward a few months later, and it almost seems like people have become accustomed to thinking it is what it is. And that's the type of mentality I'm hearing from a lot of people. And that's simply not okay, because this should be concerning, because while it may be President Trump, who some of them hate now, the next time it could be a president on their side. And while we do see a lot of liberals being aligned with these big tech companies, the concept of censorship, I don't think it matters. It does go both ways, and it's just a simple matter of, are you saying the things that we like, or are you saying the things that we don't like? And I think a lot of it with President Trump was they tried time and time again to shut him down, whether it be through impeachment or be through all these other things. And the reality was that no matter what, he continued to reach out and be able to use social media and use the internet as a direct connection with the American people. And with him being shut down, it makes it harder for him. And they recognize that. And I think that's why a lot of people obviously aren't speaking up, but it could come back to bite them in the butt later on when the tables are turned.
Yeah. Listen, Graham, if you believe in freedom, period, then censorship should never happen. And the fact that I think Madison's right, that nobody is really talking about this anymore, not that big of a deal. Oh, well, Donald Trump is a terrible person, and you know, he's very scary to me. So we need to take him down off of all these platforms. It could happen to anybody. And whenever you have people that are so powerful, like these big tech companies, like these social media companies, controlling what people receive, the information they get, what they hear, what they see, it controls the way they think. And I think that is their ultimate goal.
Yeah, I agree. And I know me and you have talked about this privately. Big tech censorship internally in America. We have a lot of external issues with the border and China, but internally within America, big tech censorship is the single greatest threat that we currently have to our way of life as Americans. The First and the Second Amendment are the two most important, in my opinion. The second being the most important, in my honest opinion, because it protects all the others. But our First Amendment rights are being trampled on in front of our very eyes, and people are losing face of that under the veil of, well, they're private companies and they can do whatever they want. No. These private companies are more powerful than the president of the United States. And people need to hear that again. These companies are more powerful than your senators, your governors, your congressmen or women. They're more powerful than everyone. And they influence elections, because that's why I love what Ron DeSantis did as far as deplatforming of candidates, etc. If you do something that Facebook or Instagram doesn't like, and they make it to where you can't have a page anymore, you're not going to get elected. That's the way it is in today's world. So they affect and they influence elections. This is the single greatest issue that we have. The New York Post article being suppressed over the Hunter Biden laptop was the equivalent of burning books back in the 1930s. And nobody will tell me otherwise, period, to this day. We have people that are so powerful that they dictate what you hear, how you hear it, what you're allowed to hear, what you're allowed to see, and when you're allowed to see it. This should terrify everyone. It is the biggest threat internally that we have. And my plea to people that do run in 2022, my plea to people who do run in 2024, you need to not only run on this, you need to educate the public as to, yes, maybe the 50, 60-year-old, it doesn't really matter. But your children are who we're talking about, and your children's children. It matters to them because they are the ones. You think technology is in everything right now? Oh. Give it another 10, 12 years and watch what happens. If we do not attack this issue now, in 10, 12 years, our children will have America won't be America anymore. And yes, the 50, 60-year-olds voters may not see that, but it is our job as Americans, and it is your job as potential candidates to educate them on why this is such a big issue and why it is something that needs to be attacked head on.
Well, gosh, Graham, if you ran for something, I'd vote for you. Let's see if we can get you up and running on some platform, because that's exactly what needs to happen. I think you're exactly right. Now, to wrap the show up today, this is a little bit of a different note for us, but I've been hearing, guys, so much about the Free Britney movement. Now, I haven't watched the documentary, in full disclosure, but here's what I know. I mean, if we're all being honest with ourselves, I think we're all Britney Spears fans. I grew up with her. I feel like she was a part of all of our lives growing up. And I want to give a shout out because Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz have stepped forward and said that they would like to help free Britney, so to speak, from this conservatorship, I guess, that she has been under with her father. I don't know all the ins and outs, but let me just get your take on Britney Spears. Madison, Are you a Britney fan? How are you feeling about these things? Did you watch the documentary?
So I grew up loving Britney Spears. I always looked up to one of my older cousins who was a big fan of hers. So Britney, everything in the early 2000s. And it was really interesting when I started seeing Free Britney hashtag trending. And so I started following along. And let me tell you that a lot of the Britney Spears fans are pretty much like Donald Trump fans. I've never seen more loyal fans and activists than what Britney has going on for her right now. So I did watch the documentary. I found it interesting. I don't think it was quite as crazy or good as some people on social media were saying, but I did find it very interesting. Obviously, conservatorships are very interesting, and especially this one being so closed down. So we really don't necessarily have both sides of the story.
Right.
And something seems a little odd on Britney's Instagram videos and posts. So I don't know necessarily if she'll get out of the conservatorship, but if in fact people are using this conservatorship to keep her in, quote unquote, like they say, trapped, I hope that they do get her out of it. And I definitely think it's something worth looking at as her attorneys, continue to file different paperwork saying like she's capable of working. She's done this tour in Vegas. Like, she wants to have control of her life. And especially being such a young woman, it's sad to see because a lot of conservatorships typically are for older people who are at risk as a result of their, cognitive decline, as, maybe we're seeing with Joe Biden.
Interesting angle. Interesting way to wrap Joe Biden back into this. Now, if you ever wondered at home, by the way, what my husband and I are talking about at dinner, Graham, I asked my husband about this. We were talking about Britney the other night. That is one of the many things that we discuss apparently at our dinner table. And he had an interesting perspective. And as a man, I'm curious to get your take with Britney Spears. He said, you know what? I feel like that they only got away with this because she's a woman. I feel like if she had been a man, that they probably wouldn't have gotten away with this. And I think he's right. I think in some way that obviously got to the entertainment industry is a very, very young woman, a girl really. And I get back then why it was allowed to happen and why maybe it was necessary. But I thought that was an interesting take that he had. And I want to get your quick perspective. Britney fan, what do you think? What do you think about all this?
Well, as far as a Britney fan, I think I was a Britney fan for a different reason than maybe you guys were back in my adolescent years. But that's probably going to get us in trouble on the show for saying something like that. Women can be attractive, people. I don't know if you know that, but you can give compliments.
Do you mean post VMA performance in her crystal outfit? Because that was a great look. You have no idea what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're speaking about. But either way, I think that it's sad on multiple levels. I would agree, probably so. Britney Spears came up during the TV age, the MTV age, not really the social media age. And when social media age took over, that's when you started to see this decline of Britney Spears. Honestly, you see it. I don't know very many Hollywood or music true superstars that are a little there's a little something wrong there. And I think it's through psychological, just a constant that they're all the time under the microscope. They deal with things that, well, Laura, you can probably relate, but people like me will never be able to relate to ever. The constant scrutiny, the constant the way that you had your child strapped in a buggy in a grocery store. I think it'd be enough to make anybody go a little stir crazy, if at minimum. I think that you see Justin Timberlake come out and apologize to Britney Spears for taking advantage of his situation. A lot of people don't realize that Cry Me a River was 100% about Britney Spears. She had to live through that as well. #1 single in the world for months, and it was all about her and talking crap about her, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't seen the documentary.
You do know a lot about Britney, Graham.
I like Justin Timberlake. I do know a little bit about old JT there. But anyway, cool. I think that it's very sad. And I think that you see that a lot of people that get in the game super early, and then as they mature into adults, people want them to be what they were, and they're not. We're different. We change. You see a lot of this with family members taking advantage of the fame of their younger children, et cetera. There are always two sides to both stories.
Yeah.
I think obviously through Britney's video, she's obviously dealing with some things. Does that mean that she should not be in charge of her own life? not necessarily, but that's my take. I agree. I agree with Eric on that. I think that if she had been a man, if things probably would have been different.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you guys both to Graham and Madison for joining me tonight. And thanks so much for all of you at home for tuning in and watching. It seems like a great time to recommend to our viewers to like, share, and follow the show as big tech keeps trying to silence conservative voices, and we are no different. So thank you, Graham. Thank you, Madison. And thank you to everybody at home. We'll be back with you next week for more of The Right View.